Welcome to 1111. I have Ross here today. Hey, Ross.
How's it going, Tony?
Good. I'm so happy for you to be on here today, talk about inner work. And with that being said, what does inner work mean for you? And how did you stay committed?
I remember when the group started, where we started doing inner work together. The comment that really got me was the conversation around I had been doing inner work for a while, but doing it alone is kind of, you're just bouncing things back off of yourself. And so doing it with the group was really impactful. But inner work for me is really taking the time to break things down, be honest with yourself, and explore the what and the why of what you do on a daily basis, and trying to appreciate that and get to its core. I speak for myself, tend to tell yourself stories about why certain things happen or why you do certain things. And to me, inner work is battling through those stories to get at the root cause and the real reason, so you can actually work on those things instead of living that superficial life where you're believing the stories that either you're telling people or other people are telling you, if that makes
hmm
sense.
Yeah, it's a really good assessment of your own curiosity uh, through that definition. And is there anything that sticks out on how you stay committed to this work? And even though you were in a mastermind for a handful of years, the practices that you may continue to do because you still have that curiosity and you still have that commitment.
I kind of call on the group a lot of times just in my mind in terms of calling bullshit.
Hmm.
It's easy to lie to yourself. It's okay, but with this, am I really, is that really what's happening? Is that really true? Do you really feel that way? Is that really what's happening? How have you contributed to this situation? And breaking it down, and I'll call bullshit on myself, but a lot of times too, I'll be like, if I were to bring this to the group, that's not going to pass. Like that's someone's going to call bullshit on that, and forcing yourself to get deep, because doing the inner work isn't. Sometimes it's hard, and you're facing things that you're like, I was wrong there. I was an asshole, or
Mm-hmm.
I should have done it this way, or here's how I contributed to the situation. And trying to look at situations from those multiple angles of those multiple lenses. And I oftentimes will kind of go outside in my backyard where it's quiet, and and really kind of interrogate myself, in a healthy way, to be like, cut the bullshit. What's happening here? What's driving that? What feeling is driving that comment or that approach? I oftentimes find myself, when I get worked up, I'm a very intentional but passionate person as well. And so when I find myself getting really fired up, uh, taking the time to then explore that. Like, is
Mm-hmm.
that a good fired up? Is that good passion, or is that unhealthy passion?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, taking that time to dig deeper is how I've continued to do that inner work.
Yeah. It takes courage to step into that thought process of what could I have done differently? What about my actions could have been affected? Because it's so easy to blame and react and get into this defensive mode. So kudos to you to find that space where you know you can go to get that reflective analysis. Totally relate to that as I recently was in an argument and the anger that I had is why would you do that? Why would you react to that? And a theme around judgment. And I stepped back and said, wait a minute, I think I'm being a judger on that as well in this instance too. And to really understand, well, why personally, why do you do that? And then having the love of it to say, I understand your reasons psychologically now. And
Yeah.
that sometimes brings out just a whole new meaning and it relieves that curiosity and anger when you can really lead with more love in your heart. And that love in your heart makes you understand more.
Yeah, I think so. I love that, because what I've found myself is being more calm in situations, which I love, because to me, that's being in control. That's power.
Mm-hmm.
Power is
Mm-hmm.
being calm, whether it's the kids or somebody at work, or anything that's happening in the neighborhood or the community or something like that. I found myself a lot more calm than I used to be 10, 15 years ago. When reacting to those situations, I felt like I always would dig in. I dig in deeper now, but now when things happen, I'm not as reactive. It's more, okay, this is what's happening, and an appreciation for those what's happening in front of me. There's a reason, and rather than reacting to what's happening, I'm trying to explore. Okay, there's a reason. Let me try to figure out what that reason is. Whether that person is something happened to that person, or I can appreciate because of that situation that person's in. Maybe they're reacting that way, but I don't need to react that way. I can come in a calm way, and I think the best example is with the kids. The kids do something that you want to drives you nuts, and it's happened a million times, but not yelling at them. It's easy to yell at them and then come back and be like, hey, sorry I yelled, but here's why I was upset. It's hard, and it's taken work to get to the point where something happens where you may want to yell, but you sit there and be like, why'd you do that, buddy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how's your day? What's happening? Like, what drove that? And to bring that inner work that you're doing, to yourself, with yourself, to others, and to
Mm-hmm.
have that approach, and it immediately de-escalates and people share more, and I found it really productive. But I've been most proud for myself and happy where I'm like, wow, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I probably would have bitten that person's head off, and now I'm just like, hey, here's what, let's talk about this, that sort of thing. So
Yeah. We talk about emotional fluency, and that's the key piece is finding your space to process that of first knowing that there's an emotion off, and then to be able to go back and peel the layers back and have the courage to do that. And it's super cool to hear your story and how you continue to find ways to challenge yourself and to think about that. And the key thing I really liked is you have more control of when you are calm in the situation.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah, 100%. Right. What I find it most interesting is when I'm getting defensive or I'm getting upset, and immediately knowing that that's coming from a place because I either didn't deliver what I was supposed to, I didn't perform the way I was supposed to, I didn't, I was wrong, I did something wrong. That is actually why I'm having those emotions. So it's not that person's fault, right? And so yes, I still have that emotion, that of anger or wanting to attack, but sitting there and saying, yeah, yeah, I'm feeling that because this person's right. I
right.
didn't do what I was supposed to do, or I did something wrong, and I got to own that, and it sucks, right? And you could
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
crap, sort of situation. But I think that is that's the hardest part of it, but also um, I'm very glad I had that because then I don't react in the way that like my emotions then aren't being projected out. It's all right.
Mm-hmm.
The emotion then leads to very quick analysis to say you can't do that because you're just doubling down on being wrong, essentially. So
Right.
it sucks though, right? It sucks at times because you just want to release, but then yet holding back and saying you can't release. It's not this person's fault. It's your fault.
Yeah.
Or at
Yeah.
least it's partially your fault. At the very least, it's partially your fault.
Mm-hmm. It's a good perspective of accountability in a relationship that has a different viewpoint than what you think accountability really is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, you just shared a great example of what you've applied through inner work. And does anything else stand out from you from your journey in inner work that you've taken that knowledge and applied it in your own life to make a better, happier Ross in your life?
Yeah, I think I mean across the board, but I'd say most is at work. Being able to apply these things at work,
Mm-hmm.
I think has made me a better leader. And just the ability to, even with challenging situations, manage them better and find the solution better. And so I find myself at work. I used to call it, 20 years ago, I would have called it my edge, passionate and all that sort of stuff. And, go and be in attack mode all the time to get shit done. And I think what for me is being passionate. And it's interesting on our scorecard at work, HR has put passionate. I've asked them to change it. to intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want somebody who's passionate. I don't want to be passionate at work. I want to be intentional at work. And because passionate means you're actually not thinking and just moving forward and with emotion. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
intentional means you've have there's emotion behind it, but it's being driven in a intentional manner. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, where I've found it most helpful is obviously at home, but close second is I feel like making me better at work, not only accomplishing things, but also doing so without sacrificing my mental sanity, and also being able to move things forward.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it doesn't help us move things forward, at the very least, I'm in a better place so that I can help the team or help others more
Yeah.
effectively.
I really like the perspective of changing from passionate to intentional. Do you have any suggestions on how you get people reflecting on intentionality versus passionate in the work that they do?
It's a great question. One of the things that we did in the group was one exercise, and it was during a virtual immersion. It was what lights you up. That exercise to figure out like what lights you up, and I found that to be incredibly helpful because you think of like, oh, I like doing that, I like doing that, but what is that connective tissue across all those things that you like doing? And for me, it was helping things grow. I love coaching. Well, why? Well, okay, I just like helping the kids get better and have fun and enjoy the game. But ultimately, they're growing because they're either growing emotionally or physically or mentally in that space. And same thing at work. Like, okay, what are the challenges I've actually enjoyed? It's helping a company grow. And so for me, it was finding out, okay, my passion, yes, that's a passion, but how do I apply that passion in an intentional manner? And I think that's the connection that I would offer up to people is, I'm very passionate about those things, but just being passionate alone doesn't mean shit. How do you intentionally apply that passion? And same thing in terms of how I chose the job that I'm at right now. I'm in a startup, so hiring a ton of people. I've added that to my interview process. Hey, what lights you up? And it's interesting. You can tell the people who have thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
and like they give a different answer than the other. Like, what lights you up? Well, I like playing tennis, sort of thing. It's like, okay, that's an activity, and so it's not a bad answer. It's a good answer because that's what lights them up. That's what they enjoy doing, but it's a mid-level answer.
Right.
I spoke to somebody the other day. I said, what lights you up? It was more of a macro answer, that could be
Mm-hmm.
applied to different things. And I said to them, wow, you've thought of that, right? And she's like, yeah, I have. I think about that a lot. So then I knew I was speaking to a different type of person that was at least being intentional about their lives in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. A lot of workplaces I see use passion so loosely without really challenging their workers to go internal and reflect on that. So I love that you're doing that. Is there any other items that stand out, or even like any challenges through your inner work period that were facilitated through the mastermind that made a difference that you like to share?
I think all of us that were in the mastermind and the different groups, we've been doing inner work, just maybe not as effectively until we came to the group because the group gave us more tools. Even if we were doing it alone, it gave us more tools to go deeper. I think through inner work, just to be able to slow down in your processing and thinking, slow down the processing, but be quick in doing it, if that makes sense. Like, slow
Mm-hmm.
down. Being slow is smooth, and being smooth is fast. And so it gets you to that point where if you can slow down and process, but have the tools to actually do that quickly, you can be better in the whether it's interaction with another person or figuring out what you're going to do in a specific situation. And yeah, so that would be my answer. It's that component of it that started beforehand, but through doing it with others gave me more tools to even be better at that, and also to know when I'm wrong. And that's the connection point where I've said to my wife, with our kids, they're going to do the wrong things, right? They're going to lash out or be mean to somebody in the family. And it happens with my son sometimes where he'll react a certain way, right? He's 13. It's natural. And he'll do something that maybe is mean to his sister or say something to his mother or to me or whatever the case is. Um, Within a half an hour, he'll usually come back and be like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that."
Hmm.
Blah blah blah, and we'll explore his feelings. And I'll also be like, "Hey,
Hmm.
like, what was driving that? Like, what made you feel that way? That you know?" But not number one, not meeting his outburst with an outburst or yelling. Just letting him feel that and be like, "Hey, not acceptable, bud.
Hmm.
Just go to your room, think about this sort of thing." But then, what I've said to my wife, because she'll be like, "Oh, like, why is he doing this?" I said, "Hey, hun, like, he's doing a really good job. He usually processes these things within 30 minutes to an hour and then comes back and we have this discussion. Um, that's big. Like at 13 years old, that's huge. It takes people, like some people don't do that. They don't process it. They don't come back and say those things. So I'm like, I know in the moment it's not great, it's not cool, but he's 13. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of dynamics. There's hormones. There's a lot of things that contribute to that outburst. But the shorter that continues to get, the more progress and growth he has.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to I try to get her to focus on, don't focus on the outbursts. Those are going to happen at 13. Focus on the processing time of when he comes back and apologizes. And it does get shorter. It's getting shorter and shorter the more we engage in that way, right? And it's not to say we're perfect, but it's something that I think she's now started to appreciate and notice, and not focus on the micro and focus more on the macro.
Hmm. I mean, you're leading your family with such emotional maturity and groundedness, Ross. So I have a lot of respect and inspiration towards you on how you've been leading yourself. That's in essence leading your whole family. So it's super
Ah,
cool to see.
thanks, man. Well, you contributed to it, so
We all did, yeah. We all had a
yeah,
good four
yeah,
years together of learning a lot about ourselves. So,
yeah.
I mean, is there anything when you look back at your 22-year-old Ross self you would tell him now that you know what you know?
To sit with the emotions more.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy at 22 to pick up something else, to go do something, to go meet your friends at the bar. It's I've always explored the emotions, no matter what age I was. But I think the key thing is that I've learned with age and with the work is to sit with it until you've actually gotten through it. Not to say you're going to get through it every single time in one sitting, right? But sit with it. Don't go do something because you don't want to deal with it. Because if you can deal with it, those things that you're going to go do are going to be so much more enjoyable.
That's cool. So it's like sitting in that discomfort at that
Yeah,
age. We don't know
yeah,
what to do with it.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's where I think alcohol is the easiest example of escaping. And I think that's where for me intentionality in terms of, okay, I'm going to go have two or three drinks because I'm going on a date with my wife or I'm hanging out with friends playing poker. But for a Monday through Thursday, it's like I'll sit there. I'm like, I had a stressful day at work, and 2 days ago it happened. I'm like, maybe I'll have a drink and go sit in the hot tub. And I decided, I'm like, well, why am I gonna have a drink and sit in the? I'm just gonna go sit in the hot tub. I don't need the drink to escape. I actually need to process what happened today. And so just I think that's a good example of trying to be more intentional.
Yeah, I like it. A lot of good insights, Ross. So thank you for your time and sharing all that info.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for doing this. It's been fun to reflect and obviously talk to you about it.
Yeah, absolutely.